Hey.
All right, let me get my stuff. I like to play a little bit of music before we start just to get them on in here. All right. Starting. Hello, hello. And if you are in here, please hit that like button. This is your entry fee. That's all I ask is you hit that like button and you see it scrolling down on the bottom of the screen. Please make sure that you like, and if you subscribe, you'll be open to a plethora of movies, television series that I have reviewed, and also you'll be open to the pop culture chats that I do, talking about celebrities in this pop culture to see if anything that they're doing will affect our daily lives. All right, today we are going to be covering day 6 of the Jonathan Majors trial. Today we have a guest. We have attorney Mark Nicholson, who also has a YouTube page. Why don't you shout your YouTube page out and also give your credentials and what you do to the audience?
I'm attorney Mark Nicholson, known as the Battery Man for my focus on criminal battery cases. My YouTube channel is Mark Nicholson Law. So I am doing some basically trying to every day do a video regarding the trial when there's action going on in the trial. And so I'm glad to be and honored to be a guest on Pam Entertainment TV.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, what we're getting ready to do, we're going to review these headlines. We're going to see what everybody is talking about. Again, I want to shout out to Danny Does Law. She is our person, our Facebook person that is in the courtroom, and she has been giving us up to date information. I think she was on Dr. Hines' channel today, so go check her out over there. Also, go check out Chillmonger. She was on his show last night, and she dropped some gems. So if you want to see what she had to say in regards to that, also go check it out. Uh, Make sure you all are subscribed to Attorney Nichols' YouTube page
Well, thank you.
because we are small YouTubers and we want to support each other, whatever we are doing. And so make sure you all get to do that. So let me share my screen. I tell them all the time, I need a producer because this is something else. All right. See how this works us out. Okay, so today, y'all, when I was looking on Twitter today as I work, because yesterday information flooded in, and that was a direct cross of the Miss Jabari, and information flooded in. So today, I think that there was cross examination by Miss Chaudhry, and I didn't see that much information about that, but everybody else might have some other things. But I'm going to go over what I have. I'm also going to go over some of the tweets that the paid court reporters were going over, and then we'll just kind of discuss those things. Now, you watched. Did you get a chance to see the tweets and see the information coming from the court from yesterday, Attorney Nicholson?
Yes, I did. I got to see it, and today. So I saw that the information, basically what you said, the information yesterday, there was a lot. And then if you try to Google something or try to look at it, a lot of it is from like 22 hours ago or one day ago, and there's not really a whole lot about what was being said in the courtroom when she was under
Right,
cross examination. Um,
right. All right. So let's talk about, since things were a little bit slower today, let's talk about yesterday. I guess from a lawyer's perspective, because I'm a layperson, I'm just watching this and seeing the information come through. But tell me, because I don't know if it's good etiquette for another lawyer to critique another lawyer, so I wouldn't ask to do that. But tell me what you think of the way the prosecutor asked the questions. Or I hope I'm asking that right, because like I said, I don't want to have another lawyer critique another lawyer. But what did you think about the direct of Miss Javari from the prosecution?
well, I'll say one thing. It's not necessarily, a critique because I don't have all the evidence. I'm not in the, the attorney trying the case, so the strategy and things like that. But I will say that one of the things I do is I teach at the law school. I'm a professor at the Indiana University McKinney School of Law, and also I train attorneys. I teach at the Trial Practice Institute, which trains attorneys on how to do criminal cases. And I've done that. So one of the things I do is like train attorneys and also teach, people that are getting ready to become attorneys for the law school. So I do have some experience in doing that. Plus, in my background, I was a supervisor of attorneys when I was, working as a public defender. I was a
Okay.
supervisor and train the attorneys there. So, in regards to the way that the prosecution is presenting the case, so far what I've seen is they're just basically doing what I see in most battery cases, is getting the witness on the witness stand, telling the witness to let me know what happened next. One of the things that, I know you're talking about yesterday, but as opposed to today, there seems to be more crying. So, and what I've noticed too, in one of the articles, it mentions that she referred to him as defendant, she being the complaining witness, Jabari. So that is something that is a prosecutor term.
Okay.
So the witness, especially somebody's her ex-boyfriend, why isn't, Jonathan, Mr. Majors, whatever, but to say, well, the defendant did such and such, I'm thinking that the prosecutors probably coached her and said, one, you need to cry more, and then two, call him the defendant, because when you call him the defendant, it makes them it more impersonal, that they're not a person, because there's
Mm.
power in names. So by not, not mentioning a name, calling the defendant, they become an other. So they're basically doing a prosecutor's playbook. One other thing is they overcharge, right? So like the very first day, or not the first day, but I think like the second or third day when they get ready to do opening statements, they end up dismissing all the charges right after they got the jury. It's like, what, you couldn't have dismissed those previously? Like you knew you weren't going to move forward with those, but you wait until after the jury's picked and then you get ready to do opening. So there's things like that they're doing that are just totally out of the prosecutor's playbook. I haven't at least seen anything or heard anything that I think was like, wow, that's like a really like wow moment from the prosecution side.
Okay. So walking her through her what happened. What did you think about all the time they had for her to go back 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3 years in their relationship to bring that all that information up? What did you think about that? Was that
Yeah.
something uh that I don't want to say that's something that they usually do, but just to bring all of that information is what was the point of all of that when the offense happened between March 24th through the 25th? What did you think about that?
So, and I don't mean to get too technical. Under the rules of evidence, you're supposed to keep out, like what they call, 404, 403. There's certain things, 401, that are certain rules of evidence that say, hey, you got to keep this out because it's either like irrelevant, it's unduly prejudicial, prior bad act, things like that, right?
Hmm.
So prosecutors are always trying to get that in. The reason why the rules are in place is because they don't want it to make it sound like, oh, if he did this, then he must have done that, right? That's the leap that the prosecutors really want to make happen. But the rules say you can't do that because that's what jurors are going to do. We're human. So, well, if he did this, if he was bad then, he's bad now. And prosecutors are always trying to wiggle that in. Now, the judge gave a ruling that most people probably, didn't catch because he's like, I'm going to let it in, but it's not being used to prove the propensity that he has a propensity to be angry and violent and things like that. Right. So this is a way for the judge to say, okay, I'm going to let the prosecutors bring it in, but I'm also going to admonish the jury and say, jurors, don't use this piece of evidence to say that if he did this, that means he's more likely to have done this other incident. But
Okay.
one of the things I say, you can't unring a bell. Once they hear it, of course, they're going to get in and think it. So that was all. It is very common to answer your question. It's very common. Prosecutors do it all the time, and we defense attorneys try to keep it out.
Okay. Let me get back and share this screen because we're going to go over this headline here. Now, this is from the New York Post. It was written by Kyle, I hope I'm not butchering his name, Schnitzer and Ben Kochman. It says here, Jonathan Majors' ex testifies she felt alleged assault was my fault, but that the actor knows he attacked her. So as we get into this article, again, like I tell y'all, I don't like to really read to you all, but I just want to kind of go over some things to get some context of where they were, because I saw on Twitter with a lot of other people that were covering the case. Let me read the article, and I'll ask that question when we come back. Jonathan Majors' tearful ex-girlfriend Grace Jabari felt worried and like it was my fault after the actor got arrested for allegedly attacking her in car service. But he knows he hit her, she told jurors at the Manhattan trial Wednesday. I felt like I should have lied and said nothing happened so that he wasn't in trouble, Jabari said when asked to describe how she felt after learning the 34-year-old Marvel star had been arrested while she was at the hospital getting a splint put on her broken finger. Let's go down. Because this is, we see the I will say this. I don't know who this sketch artist is, but he's got everybody looking way older than what they actually are. Because she looks much older from looking at this sketch. But again, I guess those was interpretations, but that's just me.
I'm in agreement with you. I saw the one he had of Jonathan Majors, and he really looked like a caricature of, yeah, it's like.
Yeah. And for those of you all in the chat, if you have a question for Attorney Nicholson, put it down in the chat. I'm going over everybody's thing so we can ask these questions. Again, we're going to try to keep it at a good tight 40 minutes or an hour. So if you got any questions, go ahead. This is the time we're talking to an attorney. And if there's some questions about anything that you all have seen or heard in regards to this trial today, yesterday, or going back, just ask the question in the chat and I'll make sure to highlight it. During Wednesday's cross-examination, this is what I wanted to go. Chaudhry asked Jabari how many alcoholic drinks had she had on the night of the alleged assault, and implied that Jabari had tried to hide the extent of her intoxication from Majors. Jabari has previously testified that she had dinner with Majors that night at the Brooklyn at Fort Greene Japanese restaurant. What's that? Karasu, after seeing a play at a nearby Brooklyn Academy of Music. Chaudhry asked Jabari whether she recalled Majors going to the bathroom before the pair left the eatery. After she said yes, the attorney then asked whether she remembered returning to the table and downing the rest of a cocktail before stashing the glass so Majors could not see it. And she wrote that I do not remember. And she talked about a little bit about him being upset with her drinking or anything like that. So the first day of cross-examination, where do you think Chaudhry is going with her lines of questioning, talking about her drinking and things like that? Where do you think she's going with this?
So basically, and I think it's once again, it's one of those situations where we don't have all the information, so it's kind of hard to understand and where the person's going. But
okay.
Basically, in the beginning, it was kind of confused, like, okay, where's all this going to when she's saying this and saying that. But now that she's starting to do her cross-examination, those secretly recorded phone calls or statements saying, hey, I want you to be more like Coretta Scott King or Michelle Obama. Now they're putting context to say, look, all this drinking you're doing is making you look bad. You can be better than this, and you need to be a strong woman. Now, he picked two strong African-American females, and he was, dating a white woman. But the idea of having someone that is a positive role model is really what counts, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Regardless of their ethnicity. So it's like he's, based upon the way the cross-examination came out, it's like she's trying to paint this narrative that the reason why he said it is because the things that Ms. Jabari was engaged in was drinking, and it also fits the narrative, right? That she went
Right.
out after this so-called attack. Instead of going home, instead of going to the hospital, anything like that, she went out with some strangers to a club and partied, and then wakes up the next morning with a broken finger and blood behind her head. So it makes you wonder: was she drunk and passed that? Just really raises some questions about her ability to handle her liquor.
Okay. Babette asks, why can't we hear the 911 call? Do you think that that's going to be something that the defense is going to introduce, or because it wasn't introduced in the beginning? I don't remember.
Yeah. So someone asked me about that too, and when it comes to 911, and this is a very high profile case, so there's a couple things that can keep 911 calls out when in a trial, and that I've listened to 911 calls a lot. So part of it is information,
Okay.
right? If he's on there, saying someone's, what's the birth date, or what's the phone number of this person, what's the address, all this kind of like personal information. They may want to keep that out because, you don't want the jury, you don't want that to be part of the trial record. And someone starts calling, and harassing the person, going to the person's house, identity
Gotcha.
theft, things like that. And they could also say it's not relevant, right? Like this, we're not going to play, like, as far as we know, the 911 call was made by Jonathan Majors, right? So he's the one
Okay.
that's supposed to call. So there's something that's called self-fulfilling hearsay. And basically it means that you are self-serving hearsay. Excuse me, I think I said self-fulfilling, but self-serving hearsay. And basically what it means is you are not taking the witness stand, but you're trying to get statements in that you made that are helpful to your case without being cross-examination. So the prosecutors could have said, Judge, he cannot, we don't want the 911 call to be played unless he takes the witness stand. So they can make no mention of it, right, until he takes the witness stand and says, yes, I called 911. And then they could play the
Okay.
911 because he takes the witness stand. So there's
Okay.
various reasons why it may not be played.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. So we were talking about where we kind of think that. Well, let me ask you this, because we had some information from Danny about the jury makeup. When you're looking at going to the voir dire or voir, how does that pronounced?
Yeah, so some people say voir dire, some people say voir dire. Just kind of
Okay.
depends on where you're at. I usually say voir dire, but it's pronounced both ways. I've heard of voir dire, voir dire. Those are mainly two ways that I've heard it pronounced.
So when you're going through that process, uh, what potentially are you looking for in a juror? And if, as looking at the jurors that are seated right now, this, because this is my question, what do you think about the makeup, and what do you look for in a jury to help you win your case?
So every case is obviously different, and there's an issue with race in this case because you have him being an African American and her being white. So then you want to look at maybe someone's ethnicity, right? When
Mhm.
you're looking at the jurors, do you want all white jurors? Because if you have all white jurors, then you have an issue of maybe them not understanding and siding with the person who's white. The prosecutor probably doesn't want all black, but there's a case called Batson, United States Supreme Court case, Batson versus Kentucky. I hope I'm not boring people with all this legal mumbo jumbo. And basically, it prevents. Well, it doesn't. You can make an objection if you think the prosecutors are striking someone based on race. So if there's a whole bunch of black people and the prosecutors, every black person he's striking from the jury, you can make this challenge to say the only reason why they're being struck from there is because they're black, right? And then
Okay.
and so, but you want to look for jurors that you think will listen. And I've tried cases, had African American clients, and tried domestic battery cases. Both clients, excuse me, the client and the alleged victims been black or white, and had all white juries. and still got not guilties. But you want someone that can really listen to your story, you know what I'm saying,
Okay.
and understand the concept of what you're saying. And telling a good story, and I don't mean a fake story, but telling your client's story is important, so that way people can understand and agree with your side, because that's what all this is about. Who, like, we don't know what happened because we weren't there, but what side makes the most sense? What side, just rings more true than the other?
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's see what Gray has. When Jonathan Majors win, can he sue for defamation?
Yeah, so he could sue for defamation, definitely, because of the things that she said. False charges is maybe a little bit more difficult because the prosecution didn't really file false charges. If she's making an allegation that she's a victim, then the prosecutors can file charges on that. Now, if she said, "No, he never hit me. No, 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 no. What are you guys doing?" and they went ahead and arrested him anyway, then they would have more of opportunity to say these are false charges, because there's no one saying a crime was committed.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's talk about Miss Jabari as a witness. What did you think about her testimony on direct and the brief, what we've heard so far? I haven't received a lot of that information on how she was on cross.
Yeah, so basically the way that she was on direct, she seemed to be more, forthcoming, which is what they do. She seemed to be more easier to get information out, have her story a little bit more straight. Then, of course, on cross examination, which once again, I think because there was that delay in the trial, uh, I think that gave the time for the prosecutors to kind of remind her, hey, you need to have some tears. And I'm not saying that, this is a dramatic experience. And so she could be, those could be real, real tears. But it did seem like there was more tears on day two. And then she couldn't remember certain details of, what supposedly happened and things like that. So normally on cross examination, you will get the witness be a little bit more reserved, and their coach to say, well, if you don't remember anything, just say, oh, I don't remember. And they're usually a little bit more difficult on direct examination, or excuse me, cross examination. And you have to be careful that if you're crossing them really hard,
Hmm.
and they start crying, then they look like they're being re-victimized, right? Like, oh, she was being mean to her and she's crying, and nah.
Okay. Okay. So I wanted to, so in your professional opinion, I don't know if it's too early in the case or not, but William Moloch has asked, will he take the stand, and would you advise your client to take the stand?
Normally, what I like to do is, if the case is going well, then your client may not have to take the witness stand, because it's like the state did not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's no need to take the witness stand. In this particular case, I think to get his story out, he has to take the witness stand. Now you have to realize this is a professional actor. This is how he makes his bread and butter. That's like someone give me a microphone and say, "Hey, Mark, you think you can talk?" Well, that's what I
Hmm.
do for a living. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I can talk. So he should be able to handle being on the witness stand very well, because this is like I said, his bread and butter. He's an actor. Uh, so hopefully he doesn't come off as an actor when he's on the witness stand. But the way to get his story out and to say that he's a victim and things like that, I think based on this, once again, I make a caveat that I don't have all the evidence to know if it's really good for him to take the witness stand, because you have to remember there's some things out there that are prejudicial to him that the judge kept out.
Right.
And there's allegation that maybe he had beat other women or been violent in the past and things like that. So him getting on the witness stand, he could do what they call open the door, and then they could talk about those past incidents. Where if he does that, I think then at that point his goose is probably cooked. You got her saying that he was abusive in the past, and then you got these other incidents of him being abusive, and it could just be all over. So he
Okay.
may not take the witness stand because of whatever that stuff that we don't know the judge sealed up could come back to haunt him if he says the wrong thing.
All right. So once again, I want to shout out Danny Does Law and Policy and Practice because she's sitting in the courtroom and she has provided us some notes today. And I wanted to kind of go over these notes. And this is in regards to the cross examination of Grace Jabari. Now, from her observation, she says that it has begun and that thus she appears frazzled, confused, and conveniently forgetful. One example is she claims she didn't remember what time they left for the play at BAM when she stated it was around 6:30 on direct examination. Let's see what she says. Moving too fast, Pamela, moving too fast. So far, it seems like the defense's strategy is to unweave a lot of inconsistent statements Jabari made regarding how much she drinks, hinting at alcoholism, text messages between she and her friend that seemed to indicate she faked being unconscious in the closet when Jonathan found her. The next bullet point is the strong possibility that she caused her own ear injury based on photographic evidence. Whether or not the DA cut her a deal not to be prosecuted for her arrest in exchange for her testimony. You said something on that. Is that's a that's
Yeah, that's a real thing. Someone asked on my YouTube channel, they asked, is it possible the reason why she didn't get charged because they offered her some kind of deal saying, hey, if you testify, we won't press charge against you. And that's something that prosecutors do. Now, under the rules, they are obligated ethically to let you know that, hey, we did offer the person a deal, but sometimes they do it. Sometimes it's not a written out deal, right? Sometimes it's kind of like a wink, wink, nod, nod, okay,
okay.
we're gonna let you go type of thing. But yeah, that's a real.
Okay. Whether or not the DA is paying for her and her friend's expenses, pretending not to know until June that she needed to turn herself in, pretending she didn't recognize certain photos of Jonathan's injuries, recording Jonathan without his knowledge or permission, questionable reimbursement request Jamari made for $750 in clothing that was never damaged and $200 in toiletries. Questions surrounding whether or not the DA offered her help with a work visa. Priya also tripped her up on exaggeration of how she was pushed back into the Escalade despite all of us seeing it. And she ends with that this all seems to be pointing at a possible lack of credibility and dishonesty issues. I wanted to go back up here. So the evidence and things that they have and they laid out. This right here, where she says text messages between, I guess, on direct, she seemed going back to the recording. That's what I'm talking about. One of the things I know that Danny had mentioned was about the recording and where you live at, and is it okay to be recording people or anything like that. Now, I don't know where these recordings took place or anything like that, but and we don't know what New York's law is about that. But what do you think about that? Like having those recorded messages, recorded conversations, particularly about the Coretta Scott King and all this other stuff. What do you think about that?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, the legal part is Indiana is a one-party consent, so you don't have to have both parties to record. I'm not licensed in other states like New York or California, wherever these recordings may have happened, to know if they were what the law is in about one party consent. Now, I will say that from a non-legal point, I feel like this is maybe kind of like preparing to blackmail somebody or set them up. Like, I'm not going around recording, my wife, and as far as I know, she's not going around recording me. So it's just interesting, you're talking to, because I think on day one of her testimony, not day one of her testimony, she talked about, oh, I thought we were going to get married, blah, blah, blah. Why you recording them all secretly? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm keeping this because it's going to come in handy one day, so I just kind of find that, yeah.
Yeah, I found that because I know one of the just from and like I said, I'm just a layperson watching this information, and I know that the defense put out a lot of information, and it seemed like they had tapped the insider to be the news people to give the information. But one of the things that was interesting to me, and I know they starting to hit on this drinking, was the fact that and again, I am speaking just from being me, from being a layperson. So I don't want to put aspersions on anybody else, but this is just the way I think. It just seems, according to what Danny showed us yesterday, that there was videos that the prosecution had put together, and she had mentioned in several different spaces in her direct examination how she was afraid of him and how she was afraid of him and I'm afraid of him. But yet there was video shown that she chased this man for 5 blocks. How up to 5 blocks, according to what Danny says. I don't even know how I even want to ask this question. Could that just, I mean, does that make sense? I mean, how would you, as a defense attorney, then talk on your cross, uh, mention something about that or talk about that? Because that seems odd to say you're afraid of somebody, but yet you're chasing them 4 and 5 blocks away. Explain that to,
Yeah. So one of the things I like to do is one of my mentors, told me when I was, a young attorney, Dina Martin, and she teaches as well, attorneys. She's a supervisor, things like that. But you as a defense attorney, you tell the story, right? So you tell, because you already know the answer, and you tell this witness what the answer already is, and so you're saying you're scared of him, yes, but you got out of the car, and the answer, yes. And Mr. Majors was running down the street, yes. And you were chasing after him, yeah, because you were trying to get him, yes. You were trying to stop him, yeah, because he was trying to get away from you, yes, because he didn't want to be around you. I mean, that to me is like horrible for the state's case. Is she's supposed to be so scared of him that this guy is running, and it feeds into the argument that he knew that whatever she was on was some garbage and wanted to get away from it so he would not be jammed up. So I'm getting away from her. I'm done. She done grabbed my phone, because I think, I think the parties agreed that the phone was grabbed, which was her taking his property, and he tried to get it back. And, and then after he got it back, whatever, he got out of the car, and then took off. So I think that's horrible for the state of New York, when him, as big as he is, she's running after him. And then her response today was she just wanted to have a conversation with him about the relationship, and ask him if this relationship was a good or bad relationship. Well, if the dude stood up there and smacked you upside the head and broke your finger, you tell me.
Babette asked, why isn't Jabari being charged and prosecuted for the theft of the Rolex and other valuables? Because I can see the prosecution saying, okay, we're not going to prosecute you for the assault, but there was some theft charges in there as well. So they're not going to prosecute. I mean, these are separate charges. Are they not going to even consider looking into these charges, or does Mr. Majors have to continue to pressure that?
Well, once again, the prosecution has a wide variety of tools, and one of those, non-prosecution. And so if they want, I mean, it's hard for them in a sense to prosecute her when they want her testimony, right? So
Right.
we're just not going to prosecute you. And that may be another reason why she's going to be so eager in, testifying to try to get him convicted, because she's not facing any criminal charges, and she could face criminal charges.
Okay. All right. Do you all have any other questions? Like I said, today there was, we got a lot of information on cross. We saw, and that was another thing too. I was wondering, how much does the way she would always talk, feelings are this, and I feel like this, and this is what I feel. How important is, how much does that weigh with the actual what you did, how you did? Because it seemed like there was a lot of feelings being talked about versus what did you do at this time? What did you do at this time? What did you do at this time? How much does that weigh with the jury, in your opinion, about how she was feeling about everything and the crying and the laughing and all of those different things? What do you think that those things convey to a jury?
Was it's difficult to say if you're not in the courtroom and actually see it, right? Because it's one thing to hear about it. It's another thing with the energy of being in the courtroom and seeing do the tears seem fake, right? Do her emotions really match up to? I mean, it's hard. Like, for instance, I am afraid of this big black man, but I'm chasing him down the street, right? So the jurors, if they're paying attention, would kind of be like, wait a minute, she says she's afraid of him, but she's chasing. I'm afraid of him, but yet I have enough courage to grab his phone and take it from him. Is she crying 1 second, all the tears, like the picture you showed, and her face is up, and then the prosecution gets up and asks her a question, and then all of a sudden she's not crying anymore. It's like, wait a minute, I thought you were crying. I had a battery case, where the woman was crying, but no tears ever left her eyes. Yes. Like she was just crying, crying, crying. And then, but there were no people saw, and that's one of the jurors told me, said, she was crying, but no one ever handed her like Kleenex to wipe the tear, and they never saw any tears coming from her eyes. So if that happens, then the jurors are probably not going to take it too serious, because they're like, this is fake. But with some jurors, it could be very emotional and say, hey, this is serious. Look, she's crying. I feel sorry for her. This is to get to the emotions of the jury, to say, you need to protect this woman because she was afraid. She was scared. She was crying. We got to lock him up. He's a monster,
Right. Right. So again, chat, if you've got some questions for Attorney Nicholson, please put it down in the chat. I've just got a couple of more things, and if no one has any extra questions, like I said, I didn't want to keep this long. I didn't have any more after this, unless you all want me to read an article or two. Again, thank you, Danny, for your information and being in court. And I think we got one more day with Danny being in the courtroom. I don't think she's going to be in the courtroom on Friday, but I do believe she's going to be on a Thursday. So check Danny out. She's going from different channels and talking and things like that. So support that and support her. What insight would you give us? I'm trying to be, as a defense attorney, what would be some of the key points that you would want to get out when cross-examining a witness like Mr. Jabari?
One, jurors oftentimes look for motive. It's not, the defense doesn't have to really prove anything, but motive is like, well, why would this person lie? Right? They're always looking for that. So one of the things you want to do is kind of show, this is the reason why this person is lying. And one of those, some crocodile tears, but one of those reasons why the person is lying is because, one, they don't want to get themselves in trouble, right? Because you have to remember, it was Jonathan Majors that called the police. And it just seems a little odd that if he supposedly broke her finger and put this knot behind her, behind her head, that he's going to turn around and call the police on himself, when she testified today that he was afraid of the police. And she didn't run him up in the situation. Well, if he's afraid of the police, why is he actually calling the police?
Right.
And then he stays there. So just some of this stuff really doesn't add up. So you want to kind of point out not only the motive about why she did this, and then maybe some of this has to do with the issue of her not getting prosecuted, but also you bring up the fact that her story has holes in it. Like, there's some inconsistent things are just not adding up. And then in closing, you wrap those holes up to say, look, she said this, but does this make sense here? She contradicts herself here. She says she's afraid, but she's chasing him. She's grabbing his phone. Defense of others, or defense of your property, because she took his phone. That's basically like theft, and he snatched it back. So there's a lot of things from what we've seen so far, or heard so far anyway, that they could use to poke holes in the story in closing argument, and you want to kind of point those out.
Okay. So, like I said, we're in day 6, and we've only had 2 witnesses that have come on that have been on trial. So I thought that this case would be over by Friday, but apparently they haven't gotten to uh the 10 or 12 witnesses that they need to go. So, with looking at this case and the witnesses that are scheduled to testify, which witness or which pair of witnesses or whatever, which witnesses would you are more ready to hear from? Who do you want to hear? Whose account of the events are that you would like to hear the most?
Well, we've already heard from Ms. Jabari. That I think that was crucial. I think we kind of already knew her story, but I'm more interested to hear the stories of the other witnesses, not Jonathan Majors, not her, but these other people like the driver. What's he
Okay.
really going to say? Like in the back of the car, did he see this hitting, this punching, or did he see her just get put in the vehicle? And then I don't know if they're going, these other guys that were standing next to her outside the club, are they going to say, yeah, we saw her finger was broke or we saw blood? It's just kind of hard to think that you're bleeding on your head and you're out drinking. Well, maybe that's part of it. You're out drinking and you're drunk and you don't even know, So, but I would like to hear from definitely the driver.
And yeah, the driver is very interesting to me. I want to hear what the 3 friends had, the 3 strangers that she met, she saw, because the cut behind the ear the cut right around here is interesting because I walked in my kitchen, my cabinets are low, and stepped back and walked into something, and now it was right up around in here. But when I tell you that thing right there, I didn't even realize it had trickled down and it was bleeding, and it had bled to the point where it stopped right here. I wasn't profusely bleeding, but I was bleeding enough that I felt like a little wetness. I felt a little thing, and then I realized, oh, you're really, really bleeding. Now, I'm not trying to put myself as Miss Jabari, but I am curious to know this. One of the witnesses on the street hugged her on the side where her head is cut, and I'm just curious as to if she saw some blood, if she saw anything like that. That's the witness I want to hear from. I would love to hear what she had to say in regards to that. Like I see, I got a question for you here.
So that's one of my phrases is a travesty of justice, and I often use that when I do trials. So whoever sent that must have done some research on me to know a travesty of justice. From what I know, it's one of those cases where, hey, if I'm the defense attorney, I'm going to tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a travesty of justice. And it's up
Right.
to you to free my client. So, yes, if I'm the defense attorney, I would characterize this as a travesty, not just a travesty of justice, but an unfortunate travesty of justice. And I will ask you, and I hope the evidence compels you to find Mr. Jonathan Majors not guilty. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Babette wants to know, why did they only release a photo of her in the elevator, not the video?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons why that could happen. It could just be that the parties agreed, hey, there's pictures of other people maybe on the elevator. There's things that are not relevant. I doubt the elevator had a audio recording, so that's not the issue. So let's just stick to this one image. Boom. And then it's like, if nothing happened, if there wasn't any kind of beating going on in the elevator, all you need is a picture. Here's a timestamp. She was on the elevator, and it kind of makes it a little bit cleaner, because when you start playing video, sometimes you have to edit stuff out because there's other people in the video, information that is not relevant, and parties want to keep it clean, keep a lot more control over it. Here's a photo of her in the elevator.
Okay. Okay. I was trying to think. I do have one more question, and I'm trying to phrase it right. is it? I'll let it go. I can't phrase it in the time frame that I want to be able to do. So I don't see any more big questions in the chat. And Mr. Attorney,
Yes.
Mr. Nicholson, thank you so much for coming on my page. Thank you for coming on my channel to give us some insight as an attorney. Like I said, I was hoping to have more information from the courtroom that we can kind of chew on, but it is what it is.
It is
Um,
what it is.
it
It is.
is what it is. And I see in the chat that Danny might not be there tomorrow. So we won't have it'll be trickling. That is the information that we have will be trickling probably a little slower.
It's all right.
So, but that's all right. But if no one has any more questions, again, thank you so much for joining me here at Pam Entertainment TV. I have, if you have not, go ahead and subscribe to his channel. I have subscribed, so go ahead and follow him. He says he does some Marvel stuff. So most of these people in here in this chat, they love themselves some Marvel, some
Yeah.
DC,
Yeah.
recasting T'Challa and everything like that. So make sure you are following. And again, make sure you hit that like button. I see that there's about 28 of you all in here. So I want 28 likes before we leave. Make sure you tell a friend, you tell a kin, you tell your coworker, you tell that heifer that you can't stand that I am over here making these videos. Tomorrow, I may not do a live video. I may do a recap because Friday I will not be on camera at all. So make sure you catch these videos. And down here in the chat, we have, I think I saw, let me look down here. We have Cat, we have Blues House. I think Zoltar, do you have a YouTube channel? But these people in the chat, they have YouTube channels. Make sure you go, and Blues House has one. I know that Cat has a channel has worked with. Go check out their channels. Go support them. They do news. They do news. I know Kat does a lot of celebrity trial information and news. I know that Blue does a lot of information on Marvel and DC and all those different things. Also check out Chillmonger and also check out the Dre Mack Show. And again, subscribe to Attorney Nicholson's page. All right, people. And as always, bye bye.
Bye.